Hey, what's up? I wanted to make a video today about Vocoder, but specifically I wanted to make a video about the modulator mode on Vocoder because I use this quite a lot and it has some pretty cool functionality to it. So first of all, what is it? Well, the modulator mode on Vocoder essentially takes whatever signal is coming into it and it splits it into all of these bandpass filters. So if you imagine each one of these lines here is a filter. So if we put this on 4 bands, so you can see there's this bands control here. If we put this on 4 and we turn these 3 down but just leave this one up, then it's just going to let sub through. So like I'm playing a saw wave, which sounds like this. And if I put Vocoder modulator mode on and just have this bottom band turned up, you can hear it just lets through the low frequencies. And if I, have the second one turned up, it'll just let through mids and so on and so forth. So that's kind of what it does. It breaks the signal up into these bandpass filters and then allows you to mess with those filters and then does some cool formant and depth control stuff and has, some time constraint parameters like attack and release and then an overall dry wet control. So it's a pretty cool mode for Vocoder to be in, and it's a mode that I use a lot. So I kind of want to talk about the main ways that I use this. The very main way that I use it is for making neurobasses, and the way I usually make a neurobase is start with a sine wave like this, and then the first thing I do is start saturating it. So it starts getting more noisy, and then I, put erosion on it. I'm just going to sort of whiz through this quickly because it's not that important. I can do a more in-depth video of this later or something. All right, so we have a pretty noisy, distorted sine wave here, which is starting to sound like a bit of a neuro bass. Let's get auto filter and put a notch filter here and do some LFOing to the notch filter. That sounds cool. And then let's maybe let's put a pitch envelope on this. So you can hear it starting to hit pretty hard. Let's put OTT on here. That sounds cool. Let's put my version of OTT on here. This is just like some crazy rack I made. Yeah, I think I like that better. The combination of the two is pretty nice. All right, and then I'm going to put an EQ on here. And I'm going to make this pretty harsh. And I'm going to boost a lot of... You can see there's like a big gap in the frequency spectrum around here. So I'm going to boost around here a lot. Actually, I might not do this boost, but I'm going to definitely do this boost. All right, that sounds pretty good. Let's boost the lows a bit too. All right, cool. So we got this pretty gnarly sound. Let's now saturate it and put a soft clipper. That sounds pretty bad. I'm going to get rid of that. All right, so now we'll put Vocoder on modulator mode after everything, and we're going to set the bands to 4. And essentially what we have now is this 4-band EQ. We're also going to want to set the range here. Right now by default it's set from 80 Hertz to 12 kilohertz. We're going to want to open that all the way up from 20 Hertz to 18 kilohertz. So the bandpass filters, cover that whole range. And now we can turn all of these down and you can see the signals going into Vocoder, but it's not coming out. So I'm going to turn these up just one by one and sort of use this as a final EQ for the bass. So you can hear it's got that weird hissy high frequency stuff. So I can just remove that using this band and then sort of turn these up. And you can hear how nice of it's just this really smooth, nice EQ sound that I really like. It sounds silky. And then we can, boost stuff into there even harder. Let's boost the highs in even more and then just cut the tops off with the Vocoder. So you can see without this, it would be incredibly harsh. But by cutting it off, it kind of, I don't know how to explain it, but it has this really pushed high frequency sound that's also tamed. So you kind of get the best of both worlds. Like it sounds very aggressive and forward, but it also doesn't sound too harsh. So another thing we could do here is maybe put amp on here and put it on like clean mode. Yeah, exactly. Something like that. Turn this down a bit. All right. Now let's clean this up a bit. Cool, that sounds pretty good. So now we have this like really intense processing chain, which is just like really, really crazy. And what I want to do now, first of all, let's try and soft clip it. All right, cool. So now it's never going to go over 0 dB. And we'll turn the bass down. Basically, this thing just decides whether or not the low frequencies will be as affected or not by the saturator. So I'm going to turn that down so they're not. Versus if I turn this up, the low frequencies will, you know, cause the saturator to be more exacerbated. So usually I turn that down so the low frequencies don't exacerbate the saturator as much. So now, because there's so much happening in this chain, I only have to make very small changes to the actual sound over here for it to have pretty big effects over here. You know, it's kind of like that something as small as the flutter of a butterfly's wings can cause earthquakes halfway around the world, or whatever the fuck that saying is. It's kind of like a similar thing. It's like small changes over here, and now we're going to have massive changes over here. So let's put a bandpass filter on this. So you get this like really weird effect now that the bandpass filter is on here, because it's kind of like, I guess, it's letting through just like a tiny bit of like bandpassed sine wave, and I guess still it's getting compressed and saturated so much that it's, you know, pretty loud on the other end. But what can be really interesting is if we start putting like filtering and stuff, like a filter envelope on this filter. So yeah, that's pretty cool that you can do that. You can also use FM here, that's pretty cool. Yeah, having like the second oscillator FM like come in slowly over time, which without all the processing sounds like this. Sounds kind of bad, but with all the processing it sounds like this. Get those like really gnarly sort of Skrillex basses. Let's try and crank the coarse here. So yeah, you get the idea. It's pretty interesting processing chain. So that's like the main thing that I use this modulator mode for. But there's some other stuff you can do too. One thing I like to do sometimes is take a snare. Like this, right? Like I don't think that snare sounds particularly good. I think it sounds kind of bad. But let's take Vocoder and put it on modulator mode. And then I'm gonna reduce the bands probably down to like 8 or something like that. You can hear it already sounds slightly different than it did. Let's turn this down a bit. And now I'm just gonna mess around with mostly the depth control and the formant control. And then you can also do the filtering here with these filters again. So something like that is pretty cool because now you just get this like nice transient out of the snare. And then from there you can kind of do other things to the snare, like add noise to it in different ways, you know. So for instance, I might grab like a copy of Operator here and put this on noise white, so it's producing a white noise oscillator, and then, you know, add noise to it that way. So let's EQ this a bit. Put some reverb on here. What have we got? Convolution. Let's go drums. Made for drums. Digital drum. Sounds kind of cool. Can also EQ within here. Let's glue this together a little bit. Oh, sorry, just compress the noise. I should put a limiter here. I'm gonna create a group here and put a limiter on it, so it's not clipping. And then I'm gonna duplicate this noise channel, and I'm just gonna put a bandpass filter on the white noise here and try and make this layer clappy by moving the bandpass down. And then for this top layer, I might do a bandpass as well, but then just move the bandpass filter up here. Yeah, it's sounding pretty cool. Sweet, and now we can process the snare again on this group layer with, again, another vocoder if we want. But just mess around with it a little differently this time. Yeah, so you can kind of like retonalize drums this way, and obviously you need to play around with it a little bit to get the effect that you want, but yeah, that's the idea. I think this would sound good probably just with like some more compression on it, and then most likely rendering it and pitching it around. So let's render this. Now let's pitch it around. Sounds pretty good. It's got a little bit too much high frequencies for my liking, so let's EQ those out. What the hell is going on? Why can't I drop an EQ here? Here we go. So you can see the white noise up here. It's a little bit too much. And I guess if we pitch it around, that's going to change. And then we want to boost this middle section because that's where we're going to get all the sort of tonal clappiness. That sounds pretty cool. And then we could also use Vocoder on Modulator mode again, just to, you know, sort of recolor it a bit. So let's put it on the 4 bands mode. Sweet, that sounds pretty good. Saturator. And then let's freeze and flatten this, and then we can pitch it around a little bit more again. And the reason you freeze and flatten is because like this EQ setting here is pertaining to the pitch of this snare, right? So if we pitch the snare differently, we now need to like move all the EQ settings and stuff. Whereas if we just flatten it and then all the EQ settings just exist now in this render, then moving the pitch around of the sample will also just inherently sort of move the EQ settings around with it. Like it'll keep the settings of everything linear with the pitch of the sample, if that makes sense. We could even go vocoder again here. Modulator mode. Yeah, so you can get some pretty interesting sounding drums that way. Another thing that I like to use it for is just adding like weird talkiness to stuff. So for instance, let me just quickly make like a weird sort of wet sounding bass using disperser and such. Let's go saw wave. Sounds pretty cool. And let's EQ, add some highs to this. All right, that sounds cool. So let's put Vocoder on again. Put modulator mode on. So again, it's sort of creating this resynthesized bandpass filtered version of itself. So now if we turn the depth up a little bit and then start messing with the formant control, you get something like this. I'm going to turn the level up here as well. So you get that kind of like talky, formanty sounding stuff, which I think is really cool. And this can be coupled with, you know, something like a bandpass filter. So we map the bandpass filter on operator and the formant control to the same macro. You can get these like pretty cool, wet sounding squelches. So yeah, that's pretty fun. Holy shit, that's loud. Whoops, my bad. Turn this down. Turn this down as well. Why is that so loud? Because this. All right, yeah, sorry, my bad. Anyway, so yeah, you can do stuff like that, get it sounding all crazy and vocal. And then the other thing that you can do here is you can mess with BW, which stands for bandwidth. So all of these filters that are bandpass filters have a bandwidth. And if you turn them all the way down, they sound like that. And if you turn them all the way up, they sound like this. So all the way up, it like the bands are like fatter and they let through more of the frequency. And then the more you turn it down, the less of the frequency, like the less each band lets through. So you get this like really notched, combed out type of sound, which sounds pretty nice. So I'm just playing like a really low pitched saw wave into that, which sounds like that. And that, you know, has this kind of sound. So you can like do some pretty out there sound design with it as well. So yeah, anyway, just wanted to make a quick video about this mode of Vocoder, modulator mode, because it's yeah, in my opinion, one of the coolest modes on Vocoder. The other one I use a lot is noise. That's kind of just good for adding noise to stuff. Yeah, you can hear it's just sort of adding a bit of white noise to things, and that can be nice for snares actually. Like for instance, this snare here, we put Vocoder on it and leave it on noise mode. You can hear it just adds a bunch of noise. And if we mess with the filtering range, I'll turn that down a bit. And we mess with the release time and the attack time and the formant. And then just use the dry wet to add like 10%, you know, just a tiny bit of noise to it. It can be like a really nice effect. And then you also get the benefit of having the filters on here, you know, so you could just like filter out all the stuff you don't want and just leave the high noise. Or, you know, the other way around, you could just leave all the mids, like the clappy stuff. But yeah, anyway, it's a really fun mode to play with. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed that tutorial. Thanks.